So it's up on brand.
The biggest part people always talk about is the interaction with other people. You know, there's lots of ways. And you have a lot of. Eventually, track insurance.
Like our movie.
Everybody has an agenda, you know, which they always not that can be your head.
We did,
Yeah.
We would walk back and go back to lunch. Whenever it goes. It's 6 together.
April 11th, 2023, I'd like to call the regular school board meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Colleen.
Yep. Haefman.
Here.
Huseby.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Kissinger Wolf. Vaughn.
Here.
Skuba.
Here.
Swente.
Here.
Baloo.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Okay, we have a quorum. Looking for a motion for the adoption of the agenda, please.
Also move. Long second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Number 6, district administrator update, please.
All right, so I've got a couple of things tonight. First, I just want to start out with, I want to acknowledge the leadership and the work with Teresa Brzezinski and Wendy Simonis for their efforts leading the committee that's currently reviewing our SEL curriculum selection, or our next curriculum selection. That committee's been doing a lot of great work, and I've had a few updates on it, and I'd also like to acknowledge all of the people that have selflessly given their time to serve on that committee. You know, and look for or help contribute to finding some solutions to some of the challenges that we're currently facing and currently seeing crop up in our district and become more prevalent. Recently, they had one of 2, I think, listening sessions, or 3 total, but this will be the second one. So I'd like to also just acknowledge all of the individuals that came from our community to be a part of that, to learn about the process and learn about the curriculum itself, and also, you know, probably most importantly, learn about, you know, the impacts, the desired impacts, student impacts, and the outcomes that we hope to see coming out of this and what the overall goals is. So, you know, the committee has worked for several weeks now, and I think they've come to the conclusion that really what they're working on is trying to answer a question: is, you know, what does it look like to be life ready in Tomahawk at the completion of your time here in school? So that has sort of become the theme and the theme question for the problems that they're trying to solve. And Wendy, I'm going to quote you. I hope you don't blame me for this, but I don't typically quote people. But I thought you had a quote the other night that got back to me at the listening session that I think is really in line with our district priorities and our district philosophies. And you said that core values are the responsibility of families, and we respect that. And in reality, what we focus on here, you know, with education across the general, is expectations. And so that I think is very true. I'm glad you brought that up, and I think that at the heart of that committee, that is a big focal point on that. So, you know, when you guys are looking at this curriculum as a whole, it's designed to focus on how our students treat one another, to teach them the proper ways to treat one another, how they communicate with one another, you know, both in the most obvious ways, but also maybe the nonverbal communication that we have, you know, each and every day, and how to interpret that, and also how to be conscious of it, but also how to demonstrate respect and respectful interactions for people, even when we don't necessarily agree or we have differences between us. So I'm very pleased with the committee's work. I'm really excited to see what recommendations come up. I wanted to acknowledge you guys for leading that, and also for everybody else who's been a part of that, including our board members here in attendance. So thank you for that. The second thing I wanted to bring up, as many of you know, the Joint Finance Committee has been holding budget hearings throughout the state over the course of the month of April. They will be having the one closest to us in Minocqua on April 26th. Unfortunately, the 26th through the end of that week, I will be out of the office attending a conference, so I won't be here to actually testify in person, but I do plan on submitting written testimony. So there's a couple of focal points that I'll highlight in that letter, and when I complete it, I'll provide the board with a draft of that. But first thing we're looking at, and there's a lot of topics that they're gonna have presented in front of them and talked about, but I think the most important ones to our district, I try to limit it to keep the letter short, and, you know, brief enough that they have time to review it and understand what Tomahawk's needs are. So the first one obviously is a need for revenue limit increases. You know, we know that we're a referendum district, and every 3 years we are going back to our community to try to acquire the funding that we need to maintain the services that we have. And you know, anytime you are doing that, it definitely divides your community, and it's you know, it's something where you know, we might be a property rich classification from the state, but we certainly know that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody here is income rich. So to go back and have to ask them to pay the amount of extra additional taxes that they do is definitely something that drives a wedge between us and our community at times. So I want to highlight that because, and that's not unique to Tomahawk. There's 80+% of schools that are either pursuing or are in the middle of a referendum at this point in time. So, but the other side of that is planning your budget long term and looking at trying to recruit, retain high quality staff, or just making decisions on, do we provide a safe place for students to learn, or do we provide quality education, I think is a decision that schools shouldn't have to be making, right? We should be able to do both. And so that'll be one area that I tend to highlight, or that I will highlight in that letter. And the second portion will be looking at special education funding. Currently we're funded about 31 cents on the dollar for that, and special education services are mandatory services. And there's no real way to predict year in and year out where those costs will end up being. So as students enter our district, if they have, if they need other supports, additional supports, or an IEP, you know, we are obligated to provide those things, and that's a good thing. We should be providing those things. However, it does, you know, on a budget as tight as ours, cause some challenges that we need to look at and overcome. So just to give you an example, in 21-22, we had $1.6 million as far as a deficit between the aid that we received and our actual costs associated with special education. So we have to pull that from our general fund, from Fund 10, in order to cover that gap. This year, that's grown to almost $1.9 million. So when we look at, and the proposal out there right now is to fund that at around 60 cents per dollar, which would help us immensely. But when you think about this, and just to try to put it in you know, more understandable or more impactful terms, we currently are allowed to levy for around $10,000 per student that attends Tomahawk. So when you look at $1.9 million, that equates to 190 students. Okay, that's the gap. That's what we have to pull out. That's about 16% of our student population, the funding that we have to cover our gaps, you know, with sped funding. So I think that would be an area that would have a huge impact, and increase in sped funding would have a huge impact on our district as a whole. So those two areas primarily will be the focus of what I highlight in my written testimony. And like I said, I'll supply the board with a draft of that as soon Shifting gears a little bit, I want to acknowledge we had an additional retiree that will be leaving our district this year. Jackie Gadke has spent 31 years in our district teaching Spanish and building relationships with kids, and she is very loved and beloved by our students and will be, and staff as a whole, and will be missed greatly at the end of this year. So we wish Jackie the best, and we certainly support her in her decision. But I definitely wanted to highlight that will be on the consent agenda, as will our new hires, with Jacob Seelig, who we're approving tonight for, or is up for approval tonight for the high school ELA position, and also Ryan Flynn, who will be has been selected as our next activities recreation and pool director. We had a pretty extensive interview process, and it was a clear number one, so we're happy to offer that, and we're really excited about the work and the contributions he'll have to our district moving forward. And then last, certainly but not least, on the consent agenda, I just want to highlight that we had two donations this time around with Dennis Stanky with golf balls for our golf team, and also the Aspires Hospital Foundation donated $2,210 to our Reality Works program, which is connected to our 8th grade health curriculum. That's all I have.
Okay. Any public comment? No public comment tonight? Okay. Moving on then to the consent agenda, looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on March 21st, approve the minutes from the closed session of the regular meeting on March 21st, approve the minutes from the executive board meeting on March 24th, approve the minutes from the closed session of the executive board meeting on March 24th, approve the invoices from March 18th to April 6th, employment contract adjustments, replacement staff, retirement, above pay, volunteer, and donations. So if I could get that motion, please,
I so move. Swente?
and a second?
I'll second. Hirsch.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Moving on then to the update on the safety restructure for drop-off and pickup zones.
Okay, so I'll start out. We will have a presentation on the TV up here, and just to give a brief intro as we go into this. Obviously, pickup and drop-off has been one of the most congested times here in our day, and there's been a safety concern for quite some time. Arlen and I, identified this as a priority area back in August when we gave our safety report to the board, and we started to look at what possible solutions we had available to us to try to address this situation. So early on in September, if you remember, we contacted and consulted with Point of Beginnings. Scott Grohalski's with us tonight. I'll introduce him in a second and turn the presentation over to him. But basically to take a broader look at our space as a whole and what options, what we thought were important pieces, but also what their team might think would be the best use of the space we have available. So they did some analyzation of our traffic patterns currently, and looked at where the most congested areas are, and came up with a kind of a rough draft of ideas, which we then took to the Operations and Finance Committee. We had a couple of meetings with the city to make sure that we had our ducks in a row and we weren't gonna, overstep our bounds, and we had their blessing to move forward with the project, and ultimately, that recommendation was then made to advance this to the full board. So tonight we're going to highlight a couple of these things, and so there's not too much to look at, but here is on this side, but here's the table, here's what we're gonna go through in the agenda for this. So we'll start out with some introductions, or just one introduction actually. We'll talk a little bit about why we're here, the proposed solution that we came up with, the work that we did with the city to ensure that what we were gonna do was actually gonna be feasible and not cause more problems than it solves. Scott will talk about the construction estimate, both in terms of price and the time frame to completion. And then we'll talk a little bit about our next steps and plans for moving forward, what our next steps would be. and then have some time for questions. So introductions, obviously the top row, I gotta say, Arlen was gonna be here with us tonight, but it's his birthday. And I thought Arlen needed to do something a little more fun than present this project here on his birthday. So hopefully he's taking advantage of that. From Point of Beginnings, we have Scott Grohalski, who has been working with us for the past several months and has put together a really nice, what I believe is a really nice solution to some of the challenge we faced. Unfortunately, the city representative, we couldn't have a city representative here tonight. They had a conflict with their public works meeting. But as we move forward, they are interested in being here for the final presentation and also for some of the listening sessions as well. So just to start this off a little bit, some of the history, pickup and drop off in my 6 years here has always been a congested situation, and I'm sure it extends well beyond that. You know, and it did get compounded a little bit, if you remember a few years ago when we had our first safety grant, or the big safety grant that we got. One of the recommendations that was made was that we needed to look at our most vulnerable areas, which are our entry and exit points, and condense them as much as possible so that we could make sure that we had adequate adult supervision on each of those areas. But one of the unintended effects of that was we also condensed where people dropped off their children each morning. So the task of getting 1,200 students in the building in the morning and out of the building at the end of the day safely, you know, as much as possible. It's not just when they're in the building, I guess, is the safety concern. It's actually getting them from their parents' vehicle or from a bus into the building safely as well. So one of the other issues that added to this congestion was during that COVID timeframe, the couple of years where people were a little more hesitant to put their child on a bus, and parents began to drive more children to school, added more of the vehicle traffic, and reduced some of the bus traffic. So this again added to just kind of a convoluted situation when everybody's trying to navigate through the same areas safely. One of our overall goals was, you know, again, looking at how we get kids in and out as safely as possible, but we determined that the best way to do that was to make sure that we separated, had a complete separation of bus traffic from vehicle traffic and parent traffic. And so that was our starting point. How can we do that, and how can we utilize the space that we have here in order to ensure that you know, we can provide both areas and have a clean flow of traffic that isn't as congested. So I'll let Scott, I'll turn it over to him to talk a little bit about our partnership and what they did when their team started to analyze this challenge.
Yep. Thanks, Wendell. So, like he said, when we were brought on here a couple, you know, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 months now, the first thing, you know, they talked about the drop-off, pickup. So we actually brought our drone out and we flew morning and night, and then we were able to analyze that and really start to see where the congestion spots were. So that really helped. You know, and then we went through a master planning. I think we had multiple iterations of plans back and forth, and we settled on kind of this would be a good solution for a couple of different spots. But we're really here tonight to talk about, you know, the bus loop. As we design schools all over the place, the things that we really want to separate is bus traffic from parent drop-off, and then from student parking. You know, those three just don't get along. Usually staff parking can get along with multiple, but usually staff and buses get along. So the first focus was where can we get the buses? Can we get the buses away from that front area? So if you go to the next slide, Wendell, this shows the bus drop-off, and if you can see it, right, it comes from the road to the north, and then we're putting all of the buses in the back. So what we're gonna do is I can't remember what was the number of buses. It was
Right around 17.
17, so we wanted to create a long stacking area, so if they had to stack, they could. The other thing that's really important, I feel, is when you're dropping or picking, you want the student to get out of the bus onto a walk and then into the building and not have to cross any traffic. And this drop-off does that. As the buses come in, the doors to the right, they can stack, load, hit the traffic circle, turn around and exit. So we felt that bus solution was really good. You already have your students down in this area, isolated. And then what we talked about is, well, how are the parents gonna function now? And I think they can function almost the same way as they are. We proposed a one-way coming in from here, and you can see the blue arrows going around and then exiting here. So what you know, right now they could free flow in here. We might have to do maybe something in there to stop some of the in and out. But we feel that if you could create this big loop of parents be able to stack along there and drop and pick and then leave, that would help that parent pick up and drop off as well. And we do a lot of these plans all over, and as kind of congested and messy as it was, we feel this really came together well. The amount of stacking you have, a lot of schools don't have that. If you just drive around, you'll see sometimes they're small and they start to boil out into the streets to park. This area here is pretty significant, right, with distance, and same thing with your buses. So we felt pretty good. You know, I didn't even read through my things. We talked about the drop-off. Oh, we also, you don't have to do this, but we added 80 additional stalls along that back side. So that could be for staff, that could be for events. You'd have to just decide how you wanted to use that.
And then additional parking on the back side of that building for softball games, et cetera, is always something that has been brought up as something that we need as well.
Yeah.
And I want to just jump back to this photo. So here you see both of these photos from basically the south end of the building looking to the north. And this is a great time of year. But 2 weeks ago, we know what that looked like. And it's not as open as it is when we have snowbanks and different things, as we get into winter. So that restricts a lot of the area to get around. But we also, if you've ever been here in the morning trying to drop off, if you look at the top right photo, oftentimes when we talk about stacking and parent stacking, it's gonna happen whether we provide an opportunity or not. And currently, they're stacking all the way down Kings Road, sometimes well past Bradley Farm Road and beyond, just trying to get their students in here. So we have a traffic situation that extends on the Kings Road right now, and what we'd like to do is pull that in and utilize our space in a little better fashion, a little more organized fashion to help traffic flow.
And you think your plan right now will work when we have school activities, plays, those types of things, where you're gonna have an influx of parents coming in?
Yeah, now, it's always, there are certain events, right, that it'll always be a struggle, and we always talk about, a lot of times it's either a big game or a Christmas program or a graduation. You really can't plan your facility around that. Even the brand new buildings that we're building, sometimes those events are just so massive that you'd have to build parking and drop off you could.
So I have a question. When you did it with the drones, so you're driving the parent traffic, so the parent parking, the
Yep.
blue arrows, off of that school road, if I remember correctly, right? So did you monitor that intersection further up the road to see the impact on that? Because Harley Davidson is right there.
Yeah, no, I'd have to,
So
I'm not sure
I
which.
would-
I'm not sure if our drone coverage got that or not. I don't think.
I would just be concerned about
Yeah.
that morning drop-off.
Yeah,
Yes, some of their shifts start earlier, but not everybody. So
Okay.
sometimes, because what you're showing here, you're gonna drive all the traffic on a one-way pattern. So
Yep.
people technically aren't going to be able to come in anymore on the road that number 6 is, which
Yeah,
I
right.
can't think of the name of it, is beyond me, but
Kings Road.
Kings
yeah,
Road,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
One of the things that we did talk about, Char, is the traffic flow right now, both in terms of the front side of the building, Ryan and I always disagree, he calls the high school side the front side. The side that doesn't have the football field, right? So, but that side, what that traffic flow right there is, what we wanna make sure that we do is nothing permanent at this point. So that we can come back and adjust that, either with, if we have to add traffic coming in from Kings Road, there's not gonna be a permanent stoppage. We might, put some things up temporarily, but if it's not working, we can always adjust those pieces of it, as well as in the back of the building.
Yeah.
As people come.
So, and the number one, that access road isn't there.
Yeah,
That's the
I
bulk
mean,
of it.
it's not there, so
That's the bulk of the cost.
where's it coming from?
it
King
is
Road.
there.
That's gonna be,
It
that's
is
part
there?
of the project.
There's a vacant lot that goes to King
That's
Road.
what I was-
Yeah, it's
It was
gonna go
always
straight through.
intended to be there, right?
Correct.
You know, and
That's
that-
where I was going.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, Wendell, because when we did the front, we had some ideas on how to redo this right away. But I think it's a good idea to let it flow, maybe even with concrete bollards, or you could do some things just to kind of see how it would work. And then if you ever redo the parking, you could do something more permanent.
Yeah. So we did talk about part of this initial project would have striping and signage and that sort of thing to help direct traffic. But we wouldn't have any permanent features that would, that we would have to tear out in order to make changes. So the city input, was we met with the city, there was a number of things we looked at. Obviously, that entry, which I wish I had a laser, but it doesn't stick on the TV. But the entry, if you look at just to the right, top center right, where that enters onto Kings Road. Currently, there's one lot that we have available to us, and there's an additional lot that the city acquired. That would be part of that. So that will be a wide enough area. They looked at that, and no concerns with bus entry or exit onto that. Currently, that whole area is designated as a school zone, which means there's certain city ordinances about street parking and that sort of thing that are already in place that would not have to be addressed. Signage and some other things would be added. They are looking at, and have applied for a TAP grant to add additional sidewalks through there for any pedestrian traffic to help make that a safer route, which they're, regardless of this project, they identified as a need prior to us even talking to them. So that's a project that they're currently pursuing. And then one of the biggest things that came up was, was the added road maintenance and whether or not the road was constructed to handle the additional bus traffic. And the city assured us that, that if anything, it would just move the reconstruction of the road up on their priority list, but by no means was that something that they were, thought would hold back a project like this. So they did give their blessing as far as moving this forward. And obviously we supplied some information for them as well as far as to add to their grant.
I would go, I don't mean to cut you off on it, but I would go as far as to say that we have the city's endorsement for this. They understand the need and they're all for it. So
Correct.
there might be more road maintenance issues for them, but that's something they're completely willing to deal with, so.
So, a little bit about constructing and the project itself.
Yeah, so when we do these, what we'll do is we're drawing it on an aerial right now, so we don't have final engineering plans, so but we did a pretty thorough estimate and takeoff on what it would take for blacktop and sidewalks and demolition. You're gonna have some stormwater things back there with catch basins, and so we put together a thorough estimate from the demolition, utilities, electrical, just to make that whole thing, and we're coming up with 1.2 million. We try to be as conservative to the high side as possible. We baked in, I believe it was 5 or 6% just in inflationary costs, which we normally don't do. We just started doing that really in the last 12 months because we were being burned so many times. You put an estimate together, you design it, you bid it out, and you're short. So what we really are trying to do here is walk that edge where we want to get it high enough that it's approvable, right? You could throw 5 million up there. That doesn't work. You gotta get it as high as you can, and knowing that bid day, or really feeling confident at bid day it'll come in below that. So I think we're carrying on average with all the fees and contingencies, I think it was about 25% above what we thought the actual bids would be. So in the end, you'll see if this moves forward and we're helping you, you will see all of those numbers very, transparent in what they all are.
How long will this project take from start to finish?
I think, it's not an overly complex project. I think if you started something right in June, right after school was out, I would bet you could have that completed before school comes back in. And I say that, there's a lot of things that play into there with materials, but that whole supply chain's a little better than it was. you know, we have a lot of sand up here, so weather doesn't seem to affect us as much as where if you're in clay, so I think.
And watch us get a ton of rain this year.
Yeah, and as soon as I said it, but that would really be our hope, to try to get that done in the off season.
Scott, I have a question. Can you go back to the map that shows like 1, 2, 3, 4, the different areas? So 2 is the drop off and pickup area for the students,
Yeah, and we put
for
that.
all the students?
Nah, I think that was more, and we probably could have put 2 in a couple of spots, we probably could have cut and pasted it, so I think you're gonna see buses stacking here. I think if you just have a quick drop, right, I think a bus could
Yeah.
come in and drop and leave.
Because you have your youngest students walking the farthest, if you go that way. And speaking from somebody who is at the very end, taking young kindergartners all the way through the building, out, you know, in the winter, you're gonna go through the building to go out by even 3 is, we're talking probably 15 minutes,
You-
adding 15 minutes to that.
There's a door, the elementary door on the old multi-age wing.
Yeah.
That would probably be either
That's
that or the one by the cafeteria. would
Probably
be
a
the
good
primary
15
entrance
minutes
for-
from a line of kindergartners walking from kindergarten all the way down to there to get to the buses. And, you know, we're talking so much about the time spent getting dressed to go outside, getting dressed to go, you know, come back in and stuff. I mean, I don't know if they can do like a couple of I don't know how you do it, but that to me is a long way for our youngest students to be
Yeah,
walking.
little ones, yeah.
Kindergarten, first grade, 4K, to walk all that way is,
Yeah, and that's all happening out up in here, I'm assuming then.
Yeah.
yeah. Because right now, we walk right out that sidewalk, and where that first blue arrow is pointing up, that's where the
Yeah.
buses start.
Yeah,
And now, the other question I have too is, you've got your high school kids going out to go to their cars and get out of there before, you know, how that goes. I mean, you've seen that.
That traffic would be separate, that would not
That'd be
cross.
gated off.
So they
But
would-
I'm saying that's right where they're coming out. They're all coming out at number 2 there,
there's
so.
a sidewalk built in on the backside of the loop. It just doesn't show up.
yeah.
right there.
There would be a thicket edge walk around here, so you will have some pedestrian or some student traffic that will maybe be crossing paths.
Yeah,
But as far as the buses or the kids, they will not be able to go in or out. This will be, this parking lot would spill out this way, and the buses would all be going back the other way.
So
you
you're
should-
saying the buses are coming in this way, turning around where the number 2 is
Yeah.
and going back?
Correct.
Correct.
I just, if we can make it so that, I have concerns about the younger students walking through the building, especially in the winter and with all their stuff. That's a long way to have
Yeah.
those kids going.
Yeah, and we did talk about some of that and where those doors would be, and I think those are some of the things that we could, I guess we will have to continue to look at. You know, again, this was, as we looked at separating those buses, you know, there was some gives and takes there, right? And by no means is this final, right? You know, if there's questions, we can reevaluate. You mentioned the other intersection where Harley Davidson was, we can look at those.
What if you flipped it? What if you kept the buses where they're at and did the parent traffic come through the back for pickup?
You know, we talked about that. I think I was a little maybe afraid of all the traffic spilling onto that road back there versus
Yeah,
just the
For
buses.
Kings Road, it's a difference between 16 buses versus hundreds of vehicles.
Well, also then we've got,
They already are
but
though.
then we've also got vehicular traffic.
Not on the top loop.
My concern with,
Residential area.
my concern with that is now we've got vehicular traffic coming right up next to the school. I mean, 16 buses is one thing, and you know, they're trained and everything like that, but you get an irresponsible driver who pops the sidewalk, you're in the building. Whereas there's a barrier right now, you know, so.
Yeah,
But-
and that's even a loop that, we talked about gating during the day. You know, so you'd open it, buses would use it, you'd gate it, so then anybody back and forth to the, for Fayette or anybody using the facility here during the day would not have to worry about crossing traffic. We did talk about that. It's not a bad idea. We were just trying to weigh the pros and the cons of both.
To your point though, Ann, as far as the drop-off goes, I feel like the drop-off opportunity in the back at least from a drop-off perspective, pickup would be different, but we have, when you're not mixing with vehicular traffic, a bus could drop off at the elementary and at the high school, middle school, with 2 separate drops, I would assume. So you can drop the kids off, you know, further back, or even,
Is there any
again,
way?
when you're not mixing vehicular traffic, I think their options open up a lot more.
You're still making those kids walk.
Well,
Is there-
if you look at it, let me just step in here, here's
Yeah.
kind of how we measured it. Right now, we have buses stacked from where you talked about here
Right.
to roughly, probably here, right?
No.
Somewhere.
Is
here.
5 by the
And the
central office
kindergarten
door,
and all those
Wendell?
kids, they
Yeah,
drop their
5
kids
central
down,
office, yeah.
and they're putting kids on buses here every
Right.
day.
Right,
So in essence, all you're doing, you know, we wouldn't have buses stacked that whole way.
Right.
Buses could start stacking here, and it'd probably actually, other than this section, be a shorter distance.
Is there,
Because they could stack further up, further in this way. Does that
but
make
they
sense?
can't, but where would they go out?
That's, they go out the same way.
No, where would the kids go out of the building?
There's a door right here.
That's what we're.
Or they could go out right here.
Yeah.
and go around.
There's doors there.
Yeah, they would enter and
So-
exit down here. They
so
wouldn't
you're
walk all the way
saying-
through the school.
They would drop off there?
Yes.
Okay,
The
so.
drop-offs would be the same, it's just the entrance and exits are on the other side of the building from where they are now. Currently, you're entering here or here, and now we would have elementary all entering down here.
Okay, so for drop off, yes,
Yeah.
but for pickup, they all have to be stationary. All the buses are stationary. Like you can have the buses as they come in, drop at 4, then drop again at 2.
They're usually stationary anyway, because they arrive at different times and
No,
they
for
don't let their
pickup,
kids up.
for pickup.
For pickup at
end
the
of
end,
the
they're
day.
station, both of them, they're stationary.
Well, when they drop off, the kindergarten kids all get off at door time.
Yeah.
They don't, they drop the
They
big
could do
kids
the
off,
same thing.
and then they drop off. But when it's pickup time, they're all parked. So you have to walk your kids all the way down.
The same as they do now.
Right, correct. But before you do that, you have to walk through the building with the kids. Whereas before, we're just going out the door, down the sidewalk.
Right.
Do you understand what I
You'd have-
mean?
Yes, you'd have to go through the building a little more than you do now.
Right,
You would, I
right.
mean, you wouldn't have to walk all the way through the building to here, you could literally take them out here.
If
Yeah.
the weather's okay,
Yeah.
because that's what, like, when you go out that way, it doesn't show how far it really is.
You
It's
know,
kind of far.
Is there,
I mean, it's not.
is there doors in this area here, like Wendell just, is there, I should.
In that corner,
Yeah.
yes, there is a
You know,
door.
could we, I know that playground was gonna have to get manipulated as well, moved around to make this work. Could we build just a sidewalk, that, you know, that would come straight out here?
We can't see your
Oh,
mouse.
can't see what
sorry.
you're doing, yeah.
Like right here.
It's already
It's blacktopped up until
Yeah.
the edge of the 4 thing, so.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
they could, that would be, there would be a fence running along, you know, I guess the north side of that road by 1. And so they would have to enter,
Yeah.
if they came on the outside of the building, they would have to enter the bus drop-off sidewalk
Yeah.
right at that point of the building.
So there's a door down where the number 4 is, way at the end of the building on the back side. Then there's one by the field house on the back side.
Yeah.
And then there's one by the high school on the back side or front side, sorry, Ryan.
Isn't there also one in the corner of the
And then
elementary?
there's,
That's
That's
the first
would be
one by
the field.
4.
Oh, okay.
By 4.
I
Up
thought it was further north.
in that
well, yeah.
90-degree angle, there's one.
Yeah, there's one. there.
So there's several doors along that back side.
Yeah.
Will they all, in your vision, right, because we don't know this, you had a safety plan to try to get us down to 2 exits or 2 entrances that people were going in and out. How does this play with that philosophy?
So we would have additional entrances, but not necessarily public entrances, right? They would be more, you're fenced in back there, so it's more the bus students coming in, and we would have to obviously have adult supervision, but it wouldn't be like it was on the front side where it's a wide open, you got cars and buses and, you know, no idea who's who, and hard to determine that, so it would be a more controlled entry and exit.
And would you take advantage of each one of those exits?
No.
Or would you still try to keep it at 2 or
We would
maybe
limit.
3?
Yeah, we would limit, there obviously would probably be an exception for the littles, depending on where the best entrance for them would be, but most of the traffic, I would imagine, is gonna come through that door. I think it's 15, I'm not entirely sure, but it's by that number 4 on the end of the building. That would more than likely, or if you go over by that 90-degree, or just before that, along that north side of the building, there's one that enters right into the cafeteria. It'd be one of those two that would be the primary entries for the elementary. And plus the kids would head right out to the playground most mornings anyway, so. But again, you can be flexible on those pieces and figure out what your plan is, and what actually works the best may change as you get into it and as you do it. So, one of the last things, I will just add to this too, the 1.2 million is a hefty price tag. There are a lot of benefits, I think, that come with doing this, as far as, one, student safety, 2, the added parking in the back. You know, we have events, anytime we have track or football, having a student bus from opposing teams in a secure location back there is something we don't currently have. And where they can let their players off and have access then to the locker rooms and that sort of thing without, in a little easier capacity. The 1.2 million is something we can cover from our current fund balance. It isn't anything we would have to go to the taxpayers and ask for additional referendums or anything like that. So it is something that we can afford to fund it. Again, that's, you know, hopefully 25% high, or somewhere in the mix there. So looking at this, what the plan would be for the next steps, obviously this is a big decision to make, and it's not one we're gonna ask for approval here tonight. But tonight was the initial draft proposal. Later this month and in May, we would like to do community listening sessions. We would like to get input from the people who live on Kings Road. We would also like to get input from folks that are navigating through that, you know, congested area every single morning. You know, I can honestly say I don't think any of the administrators in this room, myself included, have ever received a phone call that praised us on how nice and pleasant it was dropping their child off in the morning. It's a source of frustration for everybody that does it, and, you know, it's something, that's why it's definitely a priority on our list. I think we can do better, you know, but it might cost us a little money to do that. Then by June 13th, at the regular board meeting, we would come back after we gathered that input, and again, toss some of that to Scott and his team to get a final proposal on what we think would be the best route to go, or any modifications that we would make. And by September or February, coming up in '23, they would be taking that to the bidding process, and hopefully ready to break ground, you know, just after school is out in early June. Maybe some of the preliminary work happening before school is out, but the heavy stuff happening over the course of the summer of '24. So it'll hopefully be completed by the.
Could we get a paper copy of what we're gonna go with? I mean, I need time to absorb that.
Yep.
I wanna look at it.
Absolutely.
I'd like to add that when the Operations and Finance Committee met, kind of initially looked at our Fund 46 list, the things that we prioritized heavily, you know, Dick, you remember this, were things that were school safety related, and this was a big one, right? Getting the traffic separated. I think you have absolutely some valid concerns, and with, you know, getting the kids to the buses and everything like that. But if the goal in making a safer drop-off area is to separate the traffic, and we can do that without, you know, I don't know, $1 million is expensive, but I think it's probably worth it. I think we can work out the details of that, but the goal is separating bus traffic and pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic. This achieves that. We can figure out the details, you know, on exactly how that works once it's done, but I think it's a good solution. I think it achieves the goal.
I'm gonna ask one more question of you, because I'm assuming that if we go forward this, you're gonna spearhead bidding and all the rest of it. We have many contractors in this area that in the past have said, can we donate?
Yep.
Can we be a part of this? Can we, you know, how can we help make this happen by reducing the cost? Excavators, people that excavate, I mean, I would not feel comfortable pursuing something like this if we don't look at those avenues.
Yep.
And say, you know, hey, how can you help us out?
Yep, and we would definitely do that, and one of our model is all these contracts wouldn't be, we would be overseeing everything and leading it, okay? But we would promote the contracts would be direct with the district for these companies. So if there's a local excavator, right, local concrete person, you will see that bid and make that decision on who to hire. All we're gonna do there is set the bid, send the bid out, get the numbers, and then present that to you. So, and then there's a spot on that bid where it says in kind. You know, so there could be, and it happens all the time, somebody wants to help out, they will see a concrete bid of 200 grand and you'll see 50,000 in kind. So that we do that in a lot of our projects. So it's unlike some contracts where the contractor holds all the contracts and maybe you don't see all the subs, we will show you all of that. That may be an opportunity to, again, cut into that number.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think we want to forget the fact that the liability that's related to the emotional liability as well as the financial liability, if a child were to become hit by a bus or hit by a car, running out the way we currently have it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, you've done the analysis, but it is not a safe situation right now. And I think it's important that we just remember that one child is valuable to us, and 1.2 million sounds like a lot of money, but it doesn't even get close to the idea of a child being hurt.
No, you're absolutely spot on, and we fight that, you know, when we go to these, sometimes we're proposing things that cost more, but this, again, I said at the start, to separate the traffic, and when that child hits that piece of concrete, he is, or she is getting into that door without crossing traffic. That is very important.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Staff reports. Do you wanna go first, Guy?
I'll go first. For the elementary, I mentioned the explicit instruction. That is a plan that we continue to, and we met on April 6th, the leadership team. We plan to take that work into next year. I also mentioned family engagement night on here, but didn't put a date. I think we had played with the date a little bit. It was going to be tonight, but with the board meeting, we decided that that date is April 18th. And I'm sure Wendy or Teresa might mention a little bit more about that in their reports. Our building leadership team at the elementary level has been talking, and we've talked a lot about a master elementary schedule for next year. It's very difficult to get any work done meeting after school. We talk a lot about the schedule matching our priorities. I set a date that I'm going to work on that April 27th, and then take the work back to the building leadership team. You know, we can talk a lot, but and it's important to have those discussions, but we weren't getting any further with the work on it. Talking a lot about priorities and what we want in our schedule, but we really need to start getting that work accomplished so that we're ready because the goal is to put the schedule into the hands of the teachers before they leave for the summer. So we're going to continue that work. One thing I didn't mention on my report is I have 3 elementary teaching openings right now, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 2nd grade. I did interviews April 3rd. I have 2 people that have said they would take a position, and I'm waiting on a 3rd one. I didn't have them ready for tonight's meeting, so I should have them, hopefully all 3 in place for the May meeting. But with the limited number of applicants, it's important, and when we met, the committee really liked the 3 applicants we did have, so I'm hoping that we can get all 3 in place. And then the only thing hanging left out there would be our teaching position, and it had been a month with no applicants, and now I've gotten a couple applicants, so hopefully we can get somebody good in place for that too. That's what I have for tonight. Any questions?
Any questions for Guy? I noticed the 5th grade is going to the Grand Theater. Is that correct? I saw in your newsletter.
Oh, Probably.
Yeah.
We gotta, it's that time of the year, you start running into a lot of trips. So I do think that they are going to.
Do that Aspirus educational program. Yeah, I was excited to see that. Okay. Ms. Stacy.
I'm next. All right, so it was a very short turnaround, it seems like, from the last time we were here. So there's just one thing that I kind of want to highlight off of my board report that I told you that I would be giving you some more updates on for this month now that it's drawing closer. So we are starting hopefully an annual thing in the middle school that we are going to be doing a community service day. And after the 15 to 17 inches of snow that we got a week or two ago, Shirley and I were a little nervous and how this was going to work, because we were like, oh my gosh, a lot of these projects involve the outdoors. So I think with the forecast this week and some of the places that I'll highlight here that we're going to be having the students do some volunteer work at, the weather and Mother Nature, I think, will cooperate. So we're doing 10 different activities that students are going to be able to sign up for, that teachers are leading. And how students are able to sign up, it's tied into our PBIS. So we are doing a tardy challenge, and the grade level that has the fewest amount of tardies, they get to sign up first. so we're encouraging timeliness and things like that with our PBIS system, but we're also going to use that for our sign up. So projects that we are going to be doing, one is going to be involving the Milestone facility down the road. We're going to be volunteering for the Humane Society, making both dog, cat treats and toys that the students will be working on. And some of these in the community we also wanted to highlight and think about what kids are using. So Sarah Park is going to be one of them. We were going to focus a lot on the inside part of Sarah Park, but now hopefully with the weather, we'll be able to go outside, and all of our kids very soon are going to be using the baseball and softball fields there, so they'll be able to give back and beautify that up and getting ready for their seasons coming up. Working on the middle school greenhouse, we're going to be going out into the school forest and cleaning up trees and debris and everything that for the trails out there. And I can tell you, as someone that uses that extensively in the winter, after this last storm that we got, there's tons of branches and things, so it's really good to have that cleaned up. Plus our track and cross country teams are out there all the time and use those trails as well, so we're going to be doing that. For those of you that have seen this, there is an area outside of the 6th grade classrooms that was put in as kind of like a garden area, landscaping. They had a waterfall in there. It's really kind of, unfortunately, it's really went into disrepair. It does not look good. So 2 of the staff members are going to take a group of kids out there to really beautify that front area. And as we just talked about, with all of the people that come by there in the spring, all the bus traffic, all the parent and student traffic, we really want that to be a nice area when people come to our building. So that's an area that we're doing. Another group is doing just spreading community sunshine. So they're going to take kids out, kind of like what they did for Hometown Chiropractic when they did Community Sunshine Day. There's going to be a group doing that. So if you're around town on the morning of April 26th, come by and give the kids a honk and a wave. They'd appreciate that. We're going to be volunteering with Kinship. Also working on some stuff at Bradley Park with the shelters and the playground up there. And just our own school baseball and softball facilities as well, because like our youth softball players use that all summer as well. So it's going to take place in the morning. We're really excited about it. We're going to be busing the kids and doing a snack thing later on. Dawn is going to be tying it with ACP and doing some Zello stuff with them later that day for resource hour, so they can put that kind of as they're building a resume, that they can put that as part of their, they've been participating in community service. So it's something that, like I was telling you guys last month, it's not just, every quarter we try to do something to celebrate, and this is just a real focus on giving back and giving back to our community and kind of instilling that with our kids. So we hope it goes well. I think the weather hopefully will cooperate, and I'll give you guys some pictures and updates in our main newsletter to kind of show it off. So that's what I wanted to highlight this month.
Will you be putting something on the radio and in the newspaper? I think these projects are fantastic.
Yeah, I was hoping Wendell could help me with that when he goes on there.
Yeah.
His community
Girl,
forum.
How will you come with me?
Yeah, that's no problem. But yeah, so it's like I said, we're really excited about it, and Shirley's done a ton of planning. Again, kudos to her. Like I said, she's been doing a phenomenal job. She actually applied. Quick Trip gives out grants for food, so some of the snacks that we're getting they're going to be donated by Quick Trip. So she's been in contact with all these places and getting the stuff donated. And again, like I was saying, we're going to be using a lot of the money that we fundraise from our pizza card fundraiser. We'll also, offset the cost of the bus, materials that we have to buy for things like this. So it shows the kids, also where that's going to too.
Fantastic.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're excited about it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you
Yeah.
should be.
Okay.
I'm going
Brian?
first next month. So I do want to echo some of the things that Wendell had mentioned about Mrs. Jackie Geike and her retirement. So, I mean, we have so many great teachers within our building that really represent what a true professional is in the education field, and Jackie for certain is one of those people. So I think all of us that know her know that her connection with the kids goes far beyond teaching Spanish and world culture. So we'll definitely miss her in our building. We wish her well in her retirement. Couple things. I feel good about saying that FCCLA is making a habit out of going to nationals. So I want to continue to congratulate them and their hard work. And the really great thing about the projects that they've been selected to go to nationals for, they are community-based projects where they are working on over the course of a school year, and then they go and present these projects to their competition area and their leadership. And so it's great to see that they have that continued tradition of how they're servicing their community through their organization, and then being able to compete against other schools and be recognized going to nationals. So continued congratulations to them for their work on those pieces. One other thing I just wanted to highlight was we were talking about how for the high school we have the new assessment for 9th and 10th graders, which is the pre-ACT. And we've been talking about April 19th, how the juniors and seniors will be virtual learning that day. And I did want to highlight that the students, the freshmen, sophomores, will be finishing with their test in the neighborhood of lunchtime, and then they'll be eating lunch. And so we've been putting together some different kinds of things that we can focus on with our 9th and 10th graders to make something special and use that afternoon time for things that we normally wouldn't be able to do when you have a full student body in the building. So what we decided to do this year was focus on the whole student, and specifically looking at our athletic and club participation. And so what we've designed, as you can see, I put in the board report those 3 pillars of leadership, team building, and individualized instruction, where our students that are involved in spring sports or clubs activities will be assigned to those different groups. Some of them might have to make a choice on which one they're going to participate with, but within those organizations, they're going to use that big chunk of time in the afternoon to be focusing on those 3 concepts within their own program or club. And just having that really specialized time with their young kids that are involved so that they can look at building for the future and how they contribute as a young person in the organization and how that'll grow and build and see that over time. So we do have some students that are not participating in a spring sport or a club, so we actually are in progress right now of looking at opportunity for them to be able to select and get intertwined with some of those different groups and not interfere with what they're planning to do, but yet bring them on board and provide it as an opportunity for them to get to know more about those groups and hopefully encourage their participation and formal sign up going into next school year. And then we have some students that aren't in that boat that we're planning some great activities that'll still focus on those pillars, but just be with some different groups of teachers. So Sherry and I are working really hard with our staff right now to kind of finalize those pieces and then get that information out to staff. But that was something that was really important for us of having that big block of time with our young students and what can we do to really give them our full attention and try to do things we wouldn't normally be able to do. So I look forward to circling back with you in May about that and how it worked out and some things that we learned from it, but that's something that's exciting for us. So, any other questions?
Very good.
Do you happen to know what kind of projects the FCCLA did?
One of them they highlighted was their blood drive work that they had done.
Okay.
And then a piece was dealing with their contribution with helping like the Humane Society and those different kinds of products they were making to support those nonprofit organizations. So I know those were 2 for sure that went to
I think I did read
nationals.
that and all that in the document. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm next.
Wendell talked about our SEL or Life Ready, as we've found our committee work that we've been working on. It's been, like he said, it's been really exciting to have rich conversations and learn about how to find differing viewpoints and see where we're at with that. And I think we're making some good progress. And Thursday we have the reps from the companies coming to talk about their materials and to present to the group. So we'll see what that next step is there. And then we have our next session is, I think we have another group meeting and then a listening session again after that. And then as Guy talked about, Teresa and I have been working on the family engagement night. We did switch it to align all the parties that we wanted to be there to be able to give opportunities for our families in line with our literacy and numeracy with our title. All the grade levels will be having like a showcase. They're displaying some kind of project or material so families can see what different things are going on. So just kind of a little walkthrough. And then a variety of activities for the evening. And then Kinship is also going to have a table to show the families with needs and opportunities as well. So we have a couple different tables from groups that are going to come. So we haven't been able to do this for a long time, so we're kind of excited to get families back in the building. And the last thing, Wendell and I met last week with, we work with social services and North Central Healthcare and law enforcement frequently, and we get a lot of silos and working against each other rather than for. So we're able to get social services, North Central, Brett Sousa joined us as well, Wendell and I, and then Sheriff and Chief Alvins were supposed to be there as well, but they had things come up, they couldn't join us. So, but we got some processes. We talked about needs and how we can support each other rather than work against each other to really address how do we get the resources and help to these families that need them. So we had our first meeting. We talked about our next steps. We're meeting again in May, and then and hopefully have everybody there, and then see where our next steps are so we can continue to do that. And then we'll follow up with training with our staff from social services as well at our in-service when we come back to school. So we're excited about that. And just to tie into Ryan's FCCLA, when I was at my WCAS Board of Director meeting last week, it's directors from all over the state. There's like 10 of us or something like that there on it. And the one from CISA 7, which is near Green Bay, came up to me and said that her family deals a lot with youth apprenticeship, and that they had interacted with our youth apprenticeship program person, and they were so impressed with her. And so when you go to those organizations, it's really neat to see like this relative of somebody else on the board was so impressed, brought it to her, and now you guys get to hear about it. What a great job Allison's doing, and that creates a good name for the district, so it's nice to hear those things.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. Hey, Teresa.
All right, well, you can read the highlights from my report. I'm going to feature a few things that I didn't include in the report. I want to thank Delta Dental. We've been in conversation with the Dream Flight space shuttle to come to our school, and Delta Dental was willing to pay for one day, and the 5th grade team decided they wanted to move that visit to summer school, so we're going to take advantage of bringing in the shuttle again. I know it's been in Tomahawk before, but we'll move that to summer school and get more kids in through it when we move it to summer school. But that was a nice offer from Delta Dental to pay for that for us. We had a PD day this week. Yesterday was, kids were home obviously, and our staff was hard at work, and it was a very productive day. Those days are enjoyable because you hear, when we don't over schedule staff, but we have our strategic plan and we have our goals out there to see this point in the year where staff are and they're thinking and they're accomplishing of their goals is very, very fun. When they're calling you to come down and help them, that's what I love, because building momentum and the desire to want to do what's written is really, is the grind. But when they're calling and saying, hey, I'm finishing up this, what do you think? What does this look like? That's what I love. We finished up explicit instruction yesterday. There were 2 modules. We didn't get 2 sessions during the time with Anita Archer, so we finished up those 2 modules with the staff. Then we had CISA in and talk about foundational literacy skills with our elementary staff. We know when we want to improve literacy scores, we have to address our foundational skills. And so that was a very good time. Then we gave work time for those groups,
and started talking to upper elementary and middle school about how their curricular review process might want to start, given the confidence they have in some of their materials right now. So that was wonderful. It was a great work day. About noon, I sent out an email. We've had not only those things in the strategic plan that all the staff was working on yesterday, but artificial intelligence and ChatGPT has been coming up and been the buzz for the last couple months around the building on how classrooms and teachers are going to respond, to artificial intelligence being more prevalent and more obvious. And so sending out just a few resources and a few things to think about from a teacher lens around artificial intelligence. And then also selecting culturally sensitive materials and some things that teachers can think about in the way that they practice in their classroom and they select materials, and the respect we give to students in all things when we make decisions. So just 2 topics that have come up that we thought we would send out some tools and some guidelines yesterday for staff to consider while they were here for PD. Any questions? Awesome.
Thank you. Okay, next is to approve the 2024-2025 district calendar. Do you have anything on that one, or?
I'll just update you guys on the process we take to get here. So we create the calendar. I go through and try to plug everything in. First it goes to the administrative team. They look things over. We adjust potentially grading periods, that sort of thing. Then we send it out to all staff, receiving the input that we get from them, try to finalize things, and then we arrive here at getting the final approval for this. Again, we try to stay 2 years out just to help families plan their vacations and that sort of thing. So.
Okay. Then looking for a motion to approve the.
I have a question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I'm looking at this correct, this year, the upcoming year, they're taking up the whole week of Thanksgiving, correct? Now, if I read this right, they're having 2 days, it's going back to the traditional way that it has been for many years?
Yeah, so anytime we can do that at Thanksgiving, we're gonna try to do that. What happens this year, if you look at where Labor Day works out, that first week in September, oftentimes if that falls into August, like at that half week in August, and then you start September, and you start school on Labor Day, it adjusts where in June, where that falls out, where if it falls out on a Wednesday, it gives you a couple extra days before we go into that second week. You start getting into June and you go into that second week, it gets pretty hard. So with that, and then the way Christmas fell out on this calendar, you have 8 days, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for that holiday break, where New Year's falls out on a Wednesday. That just ate it up, and I didn't have a way to build that in, but that's certainly a priority, I think, for everyone.
I just want to know, because I hunt, and I know the big deer, I just wanted to know
For sure.
why we're going back to that.
Yeah.
Now I give an answer.
Yeah,
Thank you.
anytime we can do it, we're gonna do it.
Okay.
Okay.
I so move.
Well, thank you. A second? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you have a calendar.
All right.
Next is the Tomahawk bus service contract extension.
Okay, so the bus, letter of intent from Kevin Fry was attached to this, basically outlining the reasons that they were looking for a 3-year extension. Basically, it's the same bus contract that we currently have, extended out for 3 more years, which I think is an incredible, thing in this day and age where they're not asking for massive increases and that sort of thing, given the fact that I'm sure it costs more for them to recruit and retain bus drivers, it costs more for maintenance on their bus, fuel costs are obviously higher. So there is that same built-in, increase standard between 2 and 6%, whatever CPI is, but we've had that going back to, I believe, 2015. So we were kind of surprised to see this, but I think it's a good offer.
Do we keep an incident report? I'm not implying we don't have a wonderful bus service. What I am interested in is, from year to year to year, do we keep a log, or do we formally evaluate complaints, incidents, that sort of thing, to make sure that we're comfortable that obviously the bus company continues to provide the great service that they've provided in the past.
Yeah, we can track that, so all of those are trackable.
Okay.
And in our contract with the bus company, we have stipulations for background checks.
Yeah, I, don't quote me on that, but I'm almost certain that
Okay,
is
so-
that they handle the hiring of their bus drivers, but I'm almost certain there's a,
I agree, that's their job, but I would say that if it's not there, it needs to be there.
yeah.
What was your question, the
Does
stipulations?
our contract with the town bus service require that the bus company is completing background checks on their
Oh,
drivers?
yeah, okay.
That's a good point, I just assumed it was, but I don't know.
And I
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it's essential that that be in there before we approve this. So I would like to see this request postponed from a board approval standpoint until we have the answers to that. I don't think that if that's not in there, that we should extend that contract.
Can we approve it pending that
We can
answer?
approve it pending it.
If the answer is no, then we don't approve it?
Yep, that would be fine. I would be comfortable with that.
And I know, and I read through the contract, they have training outlined in there and that sort of thing. I just can't off the top of my head tell you exactly where that wording is in there, but I'm almost certain that it is. But we can, we'll definitely.
And how does that contract look? Is it like, a certain transportation costs to and from school? And then anything co-curricular is up and above, or like mileage, or?
It's a cost per day, per bus per day.
Okay.
And then the other, the co-curricular stuff is separate.
Okay. Okay. So then, do you?
I will make a motion to approve extending the bus contract as presented pending verification of the fact that the bus drivers are all being screened and background checked before being employed.
Okay, a second?
I'll second.
There you go.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, then the ESSER 6-month update, 6-month.
So attached, there's the ESSER 3 plan as part of the stipulations of that grant. We just have to update the board every 6 months, to any tweaks or changes. So, in this one, there were, nothing major, but just, a couple of personnel shifts. One went to ESSER 2, to better utilize those funds, and then, what you have left here is,
The windows.
plan moving forward, and you'll see that all the funds are earmarked and accounted to be used prior to September of '24 when the deadlines.
We switched the windows around because for the supply, because we had a certain amount of it is for building and grounds, that we have to maintain airflow and things like that. So because of Arlen's supply chain, we had to switch around some of his projects based on when he could get his windows.
Makes sense.
This does not need approval, it was just an update and answer the question.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. School board election results.
So, we had 3 members that ran, all ran unopposed, but congratulations to Ron Zimmerman, Kate Kissinger-Wolf, and Dave Long on their victories on April 4th. They're locked in for the next 3 years now.
Okay. Social media vaping lawsuit information.
Can I add, I just want to add one thing too. Before we move away from that, I should thank, we had to have the canvas of the ballots. So I do want to just publicly thank Bill Mark and Jerry Johnson for coming in and volunteering their time to be a part of that. You were there too, Jeff, so.
Okay. Now, the social media vaping lawsuit information.
Okay, so attached here, you will find the brochure. So we just recently, at last month's meeting, I updated the board that we were awarded a settlement in the previous lawsuit. This is the same company and the same class action, and all of the same attorneys and law firms are involved in this, but in this one, they are targeting social media for a number of items outlined in the brochure that you guys have there. It would be much the same process, and all the schools that participated in the previous class action lawsuit were invited to participate in this one as well. Costs us nothing, and potentially could result in a fairly large settlement. But I would need board approval before I sign off on the packet, get that back to them.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
When do you need a response on this?
Relatively quickly, I could ask if we could push till May. I'm sure, but I don't know for sure.
So the lawsuit is I'm reading this correctly, is it's bringing suit against Meta, TikTok, Snap, YouTube, and other social media companies
Right.
for allowing,
Influencing, I think, would be a good word.
The way they market to their,
Contributing, yeah. Mental health crisis,
They also put down
anxiety, depression, thoughts of self-harm, and other severely, that severely affect the ability to succeed in school.
okay,
we're ready for a vote then, if anybody's, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next to the, approve the second reading of policy 8802, patriotic observances. Is there a motion to approve?
long, so moved.
Second, Swati.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Policy 8450, control of casual contact communicable diseases, revised, and policy 8800, religious activities and observances, revised. Is there a motion to approve, please?
I so move, Swati.
A second?
Discussion.
No, I have discussion.
Oh, in the past, we've done the motion.
That's fine. Yep.
Second, and then any
And then
discussion.
Yep.
Okay, so is there, were you seconding?
No, I have discussion.
I will second.
Okay. Okay, your discussion, Sharon?
Yep, as I'm looking at this, policy 8450, control of casual contact communicable diseases, in the, let's see, I need to get to the right section here. Okay, so under the heading that says initial exposure suspected communicable disease, the last sentence prior to where it's bulleted out says the health department officials shall be responsible for conducting any investigation deemed necessary and directing the district to follow specific protocols, including those established by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. I would like to see the word directing removed and have that replaced with the words shall make recommendations to the district. I don't think the health department should be directing the school as to what they can and can't do. They should be making recommendations. And I think there's a big difference in what that states.
Yes, I
So
was looking
this
for the
is all-
Neola copy here.
I know it all comes from Neil, but we can go back and we
Right.
can ask them.
Right, as
So-
we can, and it has to be done legally, has to be done
Yep.
correctly through social services and the health department, right? So we do need to clarify the issue with the
Okay, so you would like us to go back to Neola?
So I guess we table the motion and send it back to
I'd
Neil
like to
for
table,
consideration.
send it back to Neil, requesting that word directing be revised to shall make recommendations to.
Do you want that to go back to the committee first before coming back, or just bring it up?
well, our committee wants to decide that, but it's gonna have to go back to Neola at some point, so.
Okay. So
Do you need an official motion to table the previous motion then? All right, I make a motion to table the previous motion.
Okay,
I second that.
all right.
Wendell, do you know statutorily whether the health department can actually direct the board?
I think
That's
that,
what, it's required.
I think that was, kind of a source of contention towards the tail end of COVID. I don't know that anyone has the complete answer to that question, because I don't think it played itself out in the courts. So I think the best route to go would be to confer with Neola and see what their recommendations are, and then, if anything, maybe touch base with our own school attorney and have them weigh in on it before we.
I'm comfortable with that, I was just curious.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion then?
I motion that we table it and send it back, and then Char seconded it, so I'm just
Okay.
waiting for a vote now.
Okay, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Didn't you have like two though, together? Was
Yeah,
it
that was just on 8450.
Right, so
So
we
still-
have to
So then we'll
approve the
go
other.
back to, I gotta find my place here.
8,800 needs approval still.
Yes, if you want to approve, I just lost my place, that's all. So then approving policy number 8800, religious activities and observances.
I so move. Swati?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Next would be board referrals. Does anyone have any board referrals? Okay. Closed session. Pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction over exercises responsibility. We could get a motion to go into closed session, please?
I so move. Swati?
Long second.
Okay, and roll call vote, please, Colleen?
Sweaty?
Yes.
Baloo?
Yes.
Caveman? Yes. Hughesby?
Yes.
Kirsch?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Skuba?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
That helped. Get a hold of the friends.
No, I
You
won't.
did. You're gonna put me in contact with the person that teaches these.
Secretary Derwin. Okay. That's all, it's called.
I'll be right back.